Well, welcome. I have Reed Holmes here with me, someone I met at a conference recently with tons of amazing creative background. I'm going to let him introduce himself because I'm sure it's going to be better than what I could do. But Reed, I'm so thankful you're here. I'm excited to hear some of your ideas today and just appreciate you showing up.
Well, I really appreciate the invite. It's great to be here and great to see you again. And I love doing podcasts. It's such a fun thing to get to know people and hopefully leave people better than they found us with some good
Absolutely.
information.
Well, I have no doubt about that because I've been following your content and listening to your talks, and you've got lots of good stuff to share. Let's pivot to appreciated branding. Can you define for our listeners kind of how you talk about it?
There's a lot of different ways. The way I put it in the book is that it's the creation of marketing that proactively tries to solve bigger problems than the rational problems the product solves. So Ariel detergent in India is a P&G brand. They spend millions of dollars every quarter to try and get share from their competitor, whose name escapes me right now, Surf, which is a Unilever brand. And these companies are spending millions basically in an arms race, and the customer just gets hit with all this noise and pollution. P&G and the Ariel team found this data point, which was really compelling, which is that in India, 95% of the population still believed that laundry was a woman's job, was a mom's job. And they just said, that's not cool. Like, haven't we gone beyond this? I mean, women are being asked to do so much these days. They all have careers they didn't in the 50s, hence the soap opera was invented to give them something, content to watch while they were, doing their thing as a homemaker or whatever. So this became their campaign, Share the Load. They advocated for everyone in the family to help with the laundry. So they ran this campaign, Share the Load. They had these wonderful commercials that really told the story of how women are being asked to do way too much these days. And the reason it worked is because it's true,
Right.
you know?
The mental load, in addition to the physical load, is a lot.
Exactly, yeah. So what ended up happening is they ran this in the first year, sales went up 76%. That's a huge, that doesn't come from promotional marketing. It doesn't come from performance marketing. It comes from putting meaning and really powerful associations with a brand. And that's where this all works. So my analogy, when you ask how do I explain appreciated branding, since the history of the interruption model, brands just think if they interrupt you enough and spend enough money, they will get you to care about them. That has changed. If you want brands to care about you, you have to prove you care about them. And that's the flip.
Yeah.
And impact comes from creating impact, not interruption.
One of our creative directors who had a chance to overhear your talk and get your book talked about this idea that you really believe in leaning into the tension. Can you talk about that of, when you get a brief, how do you find the tension and why is that so important to sort of grab attention?
Tension creates a story loop, an unanswered story loop. And stories work best and work in advertising because you stick around to see how it ends. And if it's intriguing enough and interesting enough, you will do that. That comes from tension. That comes from finding something that you can put your product at the center of to help solve that tension, to help relieve that tension. And that's what Ariel did with Share the Load. They found something that was just had this unreleased, coiled up tension. And when they talked about it, they got credit for shining a light on it. And it can come from a product and it can come from an emotional insight. In crowded categories, I talk about this thing called the plateau of indifference. So, you stand, talk about laundry detergent, stand in the detergent aisle at any big box store, and there are 60 brands and they all solve the same problem. There's nothing drawing you to any of them unless one of them has told a story that solved a bigger problem for you that made you pay attention.
Right.
And that's how you get attention, is to find tension to relieve. One of the best examples of this is Crispin, at the time was called Crispin and Porter, did an ad in the 90s, and they had a picture of a guy holding a sign at the side of the road, basically hitchhiking, and the sign said Jacksonville. Then he puts, instead of just saying Jacksonville, he says home to see mom for Christmas or something like that.
Yeah.
That's a story. And the tension is, if nobody helps him, he's not going to see his mom, right? And so there's a built-in kind of like, oh gosh, you know, he's got a mom that's right, and he wants to see his mom, and that's really important. And you know, that I can help with. I don't want to help some schlub who I don't know get to Jacksonville.
Absolutely.
But this is a guy who is a human being with a life and all this stuff, and the tension of him not getting there would bug me, right? And that's part of our job. It's just like, you don't have to change anything about your business, but the way you talk about it is really critical.
Absolutely.
And you know, how do you make people feel? How do you make them appreciate what you do?
I want to spend some time and talk about some of your philosophies about younger versus older creatives. What made you want to write about that, and why did you feel like that was a helpful topic in the first place?
Part of why I wanted to write about it is there are so many really experienced creative people, senior people, who have been downsized out of the business. And they know how to see around corners. They know where not to step. They've been in that meeting. They know how to make it a success. And yet and I know this sounds brutal, but they're discarded. They're too expensive or whatever. And my argument is, you know what's expensive? Making really dumb mistakes and having to pay for those. So there's a place for that. Now, maybe the model isn't an always on staff, really senior, highly paid creative director, but having one that knows the lessons and can kind of come and coach and fraction, whatever you want to call it, that can save a lot of money in the long run.
Absolutely.
I also think that there's a lot of value in the younger perspective. So between the two, you've got kind of a 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah.
And so, but if you're left to figure it out as a younger creative person, and you don't have a mentor or someone to go ask, not like, how did you guys do it back in the last century, but like the personalities, the agendas, all of that stuff is not going anywhere.
Right.
The skills on how to deal with that stuff so that you can get to the win-win for everybody, that's the real talent for creative people. And the more younger people can do that, the better the agency will be for it.